Some interesting finds from the city of Jerusalem. And so this is going back to the Old Testament periods. Some jugs, ceramic storage jars, the remnants of an iron axe, and some oil lamps from the period. Okay, so let's make our way and start walking down. We've got a bit of a way to go before we actually get to the actual water system. So this is not the place you want to be if you are in any way claustrophobic. We're now in the beginning of the tunnel system. Now you've got to understand that we've got steps to walk down, but these guys didn't have steps to walk down when they were going down to collect water and all of that. So let's start to make our way down the steps. Don't know if you can get any sort of appreciation for how steep these steps are at the start. And it amazes me that this water system, how people got up and down. And this would have been one of the ways, or other ways that were probably nowhere on the other parts of the city which were nowhere near as steep. But it's just amazing. If we have a look, we can see over later periods of time that the wall, this was carved out. This tunnel was actually carved out. So to make their way, to make it a little bit easier to navigate, a little bit more headroom, and make it a bit easier for everybody involved to get into the tunnel system. You can see here the natural rock that they were actually walking on. It's even got a bit of dampness of the water, natural water flowing down onto the rock. It's just hard to imagine how treacherous it would have actually been. We come up to Warren Shaft now. And so this is what we believe. Let me put my selfie stick out even a little bit further just to give you some sort of idea, you can see the light down there, which is where the water from the Gihon Spring is. So it's an incredible feat to be able to try and climb up here. In the 1990s, some professional mountain climbers took on the task without any equipment to be able to climb up, and they did actually make it. But it's just phenomenal to get some sort of understanding about how steep and high, so you can understand the idea that if someone's up here, the lame and the blind can defend this spot. And we can start to get some sort of understanding. Now, sorry, in non-war times, of course, they would come up and they would be able to draw their water. So they would have a bucket on a string and draw the water up. So hard work for anybody at any time and any period of history. So that's what's known as Warren Shaft, or the city of David. Sorry, rather the tunnel that David actually entered in through the city. Just phenomenal with the miraculous about what's actually being encountered here. Now we're making our way down to the Gihon Spring, and as we go around, we're going to encounter some of the fortifications that David built after he conquered the city. He created these two massive towers around the fortifications. So this is what's known as the entrance to the Canaanite tunnel. We're not actually going to go through it. It was a dry tunnel where they would come and collect water out of this pool here, which again has become completely dry over the generations. Now we have a nice little reconstruction. We can see here the large boulders, and to give you an idea, each one of those boulders is about the size of a small car, which was the original fortifications that have been found at the base of the spring. So they built massive guard towers each side of the spring, because of course they didn't want to happen again what happened to David. So this became a highly fortified area, but it had many of these massive towers around Jerusalem and the city of David. Still making our way down from the royal palace area. This might give you a little bit of an idea. These are the actual remnants of the bases of the towers. That's a nice, you can see just going down, down, down. And we're going to see the bottom of those rocks as we continue on. So these were huge fortifications, huge towers that were built to defend the city of David. This is new. Okay, haven't been seeing this before. That's nice. Gives you a really close-up view of the base of the tower. Again, this is all original, it's not reconstructed. Give you some sort of idea and close-up view of the boulders and the rocks that are involved in the construction of these towers. You know, how do they even move these rocks around? Now, we are making our way to the beginning of the Gihon Spring, and I'm going to see if I can get us any more light. Okay, enjoy. I don't know if you can hear the water rumbling yet, but as we're coming through, again, actually, let's go for a wander down here first of all. I've actually never been down here. Let's go for a little bit of a wander down the Canaanite tunnel. I don't know if you can get any idea of how narrow this is, but the water bottles in my backpack are getting squashed. My shoulders are being squashed. It's a very narrow tunnel. And I'm going to have a problem if some people want to come back the other way, because I'm actually going to double back and not go all the way through. So let me have a quick look at the Canaanite tunnel. And we're going to be going on our way through. So this is a dry tunnel. And again, this was used so that they could get their water and come through. So you can hear my other drink bottle banging against the walls, because this is extremely tight, extremely narrow, and I am having to twist and turn. There's many points along here, it's not even my shoulder width, like right there, sort of having to squash my way through in the Canaanite tunnel. They've very nicely put some lighting in here for us. This is the way you come out. If you're a little bit claustrophobic or don't want to get wet, you can make your way out through here. You can see it's quite a long tunnel, quite a long path as you go through. Just a nice experience. I've never done this before. Put some reinforcing on the wall here. Coming towards the end of the Canaanite tunnel. This is probably, in a way, what gave King Hezekiah the idea. Now, it's very typical for tunnels to be built, but what was not typical, let's see if I can make my way. Now, I'm not meant to do this, because if someone else comes the opposite way, there is literally no way known we're going to be able to pass each other, but we're very fortunate that literally only seen one other person. That gentleman we passed on the way down. So I'm making my way back to Hezekiah's tunnel, and likewise this was what the Canaanites built in order to protect the water supply. Protecting the water supply was number one. Quite often there'd be sieges, you would starve your opponents out, but if you could remove the water supply from them, you could very quickly take the city, because their storage water would eventually run out, and in a place like this area, the part of the world where it's very hot and dry for a long period of time, you can't rely on rainfall to be collected off roofs and things like that. It only can come from fresh water supplies. So water is critically important. You want to take the water away from the attackers, and you want to keep the water for yourself. And I'm almost here at the end, I think. This is looking very promising. And almost this really narrow part as my water bottle in my backpack scrapes along. Oh, I'm glad I did this. I haven't done this before. Here we go. Near the end, or the beginning now. And again, same idea. Going to the Gihon spring and being able to bring your water back. And eventually, the bottle dropped out. Okay, so we're back at the beginning. You're not allowed to do this, but I successfully navigated the spring backwards and forwards. Okay, so hopefully you can hear the gushing water. Now we're going into Hezekiah's tunnel. And let's see if they've added lighting. They've added a little bit of mood lighting here. And this is the Gihon spring where the water starts flowing from, and that's the same spring and the same water that's been flowing for thousands of years. Now we're going to step into the water. It's probably going to be, oh yes, a nice cool about 15, 16 degrees, which is always very nice on a hot Jerusalem day. Cool off. Oh, get your phone out, please. Don't you dare. Just stay right behind me. Okay, we've just gone past the spring. We're at the beginning and we're starting to get, the water's a little bit deeper. We're about, knee deep. And we're going deeper. You can see here one of the side channels that was dug over the years, going up to Warren's shaft. This is the deepest part at the beginning. And right now, if I was to stand up straight, my head would be hitting the ceiling. Now we're going down into a deeper area again. And the tunnel, as you can see, it sort of curves. Not even curves, there's some sharp turns that occur. And again, we're at very narrow points here in the tunnel. We've got a section here that's got plenty of headroom. Now, I don't know if you can notice the white of the floor there, but they've placed some limestone over the top now, but that was a plastered rendered waterproofing, of course, to keep the water in. Of course, the tunnel was actually never designed to be walked through, but it's got some waterproofing to stop the water seeping through any cracks of the rock and not getting to its intended location at the end of the spring. Actually, now we're starting to see the broken up remains of the waterproofing. You can see there some of the places so a lot of the places it's very, very tight. This also goes to tell us a little bit about something about the height and the stature of the men who were digging the tunnels. And of course, you're not wanting to make it any wider than you need to be because you're cutting through this very hard stone to make your way through. And also don't forget that the actual invaders are coming. The Persians and the Assyrians are coming. The Assyrians are coming and they're going to surround Jerusalem, and that's why the tunnel was actually built, to stop the invading army, as the Lord told Hezekiah to build the tunnel. And that's why it's an absolute miraculous achievement to do this from two different ends. I don't know whether you can get any idea of the perception of the constant moving and curving and winding. My theory when I did some research on this in 1996 is that they're following a crack or a fissure in the rock, and that's why they were able to go and continue, because at the other end of this tunnel a small amount of water was coming out and they were pretty confident. Now, I'm just going to flip my camera for a second. See, it's not going to work because I haven't got a light. So I'll have to put it back the other way. But I am ducking down now to get through. So the stature of the men. So we know the story of Solomon, that he was head and shoulders above the rest. We also know from tombs that have been found around Jerusalem that the height of an average male was about 150 centimetres. And the reason why we know that is because the tombs had burial stones where the bodies would be laid out, and the burial stones could not accommodate anybody more than about 150, 155 centimetres. So it's very tight, and this location very narrow, and there's very little headroom. Oh, I can stand up again as we continue on. Now, trying to find a good place. If we can see here, the axe chisels are going like that, so chiseling like this down that direction, and the angle of the chisels is going that way as they're chiseling through the rock, which tells me that we still haven't quite reached the meeting point. Because when we reach the meeting point, axe upon axe, the axemen met each other in the middle, which is what the inscription tells us. And so I love the story of Hezekiah's tunnel, for the bravery, the faith in believing in God, the work effort of the whole of the town. I mean, the men could only be in there for a short period of time. They had to invent some sort of way to get fresh air so the men could work and not die from carbon dioxide poisoning, as they continued to build the tunnel, probably day and night, as we still see a really great example here of the axe angle still going towards the middle of the tunnel. having to drop down again. Weights constantly changing. And of course they needed to. Yeah. So now here we are at the meeting point. You can see there the change in direction. It's going back this way. So this is where they met. Axemen. Now, it just blows me away. With all what they've learnt and building tunnels underground for transportation at the moment, it's a fairly well-known fact that they can't meet perfectly in the middle. Yet these guys met perfectly in the middle. Even if they were following a crack, it's just a miraculous story of the provision of God. We're going to come up a little bit on this end to a couple of what we call false starts. And that's where they take a slight deviation. There's one just here, it's not that big, so I'll wait for a better one to show you. And yeah, I don't know if you can notice, but the water's dripping. You probably can't see the water. It's actually dripping. Probably can't. Maybe if I can. You can maybe see it now, just above my hand. So again, water coming through the rock, through these different cracks, little bits of water. Who knows where it's coming from? Have to be a geologist to answer that question. But again, the water pressure from further afield in the water, and we know the story frequently of the water coming out of the rock. And this is one of those places where the water comes out of the rock, which was always seen to be a miraculous provision of God. The water flowing sometimes for thousands of kilometres under the ground until eventually under pressure, like a hose, springs forth under the water. Now it's really low here. I'd love to show you how far I'm bending down. It's lucky to be 150 centimetres, if that, at this particular point. I bet you Carol's even ducking. Are you ducking, Carol? Yep. She said she's ducking. And now we're getting to a slightly higher part, which I'm always happy about. Remember, this is 533 metres. Not the place if you're slightly claustrophobic at all. Because it is, we turn these lights off and it is 100% pitch black. There is no light coming in from anywhere. There's one of these starting to come up to some of these sharp deviations. Remember, I think they're following a crack in the rock, which makes a lot of sense for these deviations as the water's finding its way naturally through the rock. Always wear a hat when you're going through Hezekiah's tunnel because your head's going to hit the ceiling. It's good to have that hat on. Now here we're coming up to one of the big deviations. Let's see. Now you can see here, maybe you can, hopefully you can. You can see it's coming in and then going out on a right angle. So they went, nope, that's the wrong way, change it. Nope, that's the wrong way, change it. So they're called false starts. where they would change their direction, and even coming this way, we can see they actually went in the reverse direction for about 10 centimetres and realised that probably the cracks ran off on a juncture there but stopped. So that's what they're doing, they're following a crack, following the water. Another right angle turn. How did they do this? Short of the miracle of God, no one can still fully answer the question. There is human engineering, but when we think about 3,000 years later, people would struggle to do this. It's just a miracle. Here's another one of these. You can see that one a little bit better. 2 false starts in the wall, 3 false starts. And now we're starting to get a little bit of height. And now it's getting to, we must be getting close towards the end. Because at the end, you start to get a little bit more height, a little bit more comfort. And we'll explain that when we start to see the very high ending. Again, we get another sharp deviation. Constant change of direction. It's got lower again, so maybe we're not near the end. And another sharp change in direction. Here's the best of the false starts. Have a look at that. They deviate quite a long way, almost a metre into the rock. And again, they probably channeled it out until there was no more of the crack. Because the natural crack is sort of occurring. It's not just one straight line. They seem to have a lot more, less deviations at the other end. And they did at this end where there's several deviations occurring. And we've got another big one over here. It's a really big one, where they've gone in about 2 metres into the rock, come back out again. Oh, and we're right in the low part. I'm almost able to stand up fully again. See the waterproofing on the sides. You can see the contrast there. The lighter colour is the natural stone, the darker colour is the waterproofing. Because of course they didn't want to lose any of this precious water. one of the interesting things that most people don't realise is when we're talking about the ritual baths and things like that, you can't use water from rainwater. It has to be water from a spring or from a river. So that's why John the Baptist is baptizing down at the river, and while the people are doing ritual cleansing down here at the pool of Siloam, because it's water given by God. And so to make it holy and pure in here in Jerusalem, they would add the rainwater, which they would be catching off their roofs and using for domestic purposes and drinking and every imaginable thing, but they would take water and they would have it in those stone vessels and those stone jars, and they would then be able to put that water into the mikvaot, and that would, according to the rabbis, they would be able to mix that water, and therefore the rainwater off the roof together with the spring water would make the water pure, and they were able to do that. I don't know the exact ratios, but in the Mishnah there's all the instructions of how to do that and what's appropriate. But when you're coming down here to the pool of Siloam and you're being immersed in the water down here, you are getting the 100% pure water from God coming up out of the spring. Likewise, the Jordan River emerges out of the rocks. And unfortunately we can't do any filming of that, but if you have a look at some of my other videos on Tel Dan or the baptism videos, you'll actually see the water again coming directly out of the rocks. So that's the source of purity of the water. God is the provider of water, and the miraculous water always comes out of the rock. Think about the stories of Moses and the water coming from the rock being a miraculous provision of God. This time I think we are coming towards the end. It's been a while since I've done this, and 533 metres walking through a tunnel is a long way. And when we do get towards the end of the tunnel, the height starts to rise, which it is now. I could just touch the roof, and now wouldn't be able to as it continues to rise. So people have asked the question, why does it rise towards the end? Well, the Gihon spring is water coming out under pressure. So likewise, the water coming through the fissure in the rock, the crack in the rock, is under pressure. And when it's more pressure, it will bubble through. So it's logical to assume that what they were able to do was get some water under when it was coming out under high pressure, and then at times when it was a lower pressure, the water wouldn't flow and they would get it from the spring itself. So I think that's how they were able to follow the water coming out from the Gihon spring right into the middle of the city of David. So it was safe and secure and never ending, which enabled Hezekiah to defend against the attacking armies, and Jerusalem remained safe from the attacking armies. See, we're getting towards the end. The tunnel height is now about 4 meters. So again, the logic is that they dug the tunnel to follow the crack, and then eventually what they needed to do was lower this height, because the other important thing about the inscription is, and the water flowed. So if you've got the Gihon spring coming and the water gets stuck because this end is too high, then the water is not going to flow. So once they had dug the initial tunnel, they then had to dig it so that the water could flow. Some people argue that they were able to do that right from the very beginning at the meeting point. I think it's more logical that they met and then they dug out these huge amounts of stone to ensure that the water was able to flow through gravity. So like I was saying before, the water coming through the rock here was very likely under pressure, like a pipe forcing the water up. And that was what they were able to flow. So many people suggest, well, how do they know that that's where the water was coming from? Well, there's some small red seeds is what some people thought they put in the water supply. And then when the red seeds came out the other end, they knew that the water had come from the Gihon spring and not just a small other secondary source of water. So they knew if they dug the tunnel, they would get this massive volume of water, constantly fresh water, underground pure spring water coming into the city of David. I think we are literally getting, as they say, a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think you can see it on the screen yet. We're seeing a very faint hint of light up in front of us, which is a good indication that we are coming to the end of the tunnel. And while it's very exciting, it's a little bit tiring walking knee deep through this water for 533 meters. It's quite narrow again, a little bit of winding. Sure enough, you can now see the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, this here is the spot where the inscription was found, and it was chiseled out and taken to the Istanbul Museum by the Ottomans. But we'll see a replica of it, and you'd sort of say, why was it here, not in the middle? Well, what's the point of having an inscription praising people if nobody can read it? Now we're stepping out of the tunnel. And this was the area known. Used to be an inscription. They still got the replica inscription out here. Let's see, I think they might have. Around the corner. No. Someone's taken it. Even they're stealing replicas. This was originally thought, probably 200-300 years ago, when this was first discovered, to be the Pool of Siloam. But it actually isn't. It's just what was done by the Byzantines as a point where they could get there. So we've wandered through Hezekiah's tunnel, and we're about to make our way across to the Pool of Siloam. Hope you enjoyed that little journey with us and get a bit of an appreciation of what a challenge it was to dig Hezekiah's tunnel. We'll see you in the next lesson when we talk about the Pool of Siloam, which is